Welcome to Epic Begins with One Step Forward, the podcast that reveals how to plan, achieve, and enjoy the journey of creating epic results in your life, business, health, and relationships. Here's your host, best-selling author and motivational speaker, Xander Sprague.
Hello, epic people, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward. I'm your host, Xander Sprague, and today I am so honored to be joined by Rhonda Britten. Rhonda, tell us who you are and what you do.
No, Xander, that's so much. Oh my God, who am I? I'm a girl. I live in Los Angeles. No, so basically my credentials are first life coach in television in the world to change lives, 600 episodes of television, won an Emmy for my work in Starting Over, NBC daytime reality show. I have been changing lives for 30 years and written 4 books. My most popular one is Fearless Living, which is the name of what I do. I help people to live fearlessly. Been on Oprah, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so I have done a lot. And really what matters the most is that I have devoted my life to one thing and one thing only, which is to help people master fear. And that is really what my calling card is. That is what I'm devoted to. And what everything I do is about on some way, shape, or form.
That is awesome. I am all about that, because I think oftentimes the things that scare us most about doing, those bold, audacious things that we think about, those, dare I say, epic journeys that we think about going on, are often the most rewarding. Yes. So because I just started my own TV show, I'm interested. How did you pitch a TV show and get it on the air?
Well, it's a couple. Well, one, the first TV show I was on, I did not pitch. Well, okay. I didn't pitch any of the TV shows I was on. I have pitched lots of TV shows, which is a separate conversation.
Absolutely.
But how I got on my first television show, so there was no such thing as reality television when I started. So nobody had it. It was not anywhere in the world. And I was on book tour for my first book, Fearless Living, in England. And my publicist and I are going to the bookstores and everything. And she goes, Rhonda, I just got a call from a production company, and they're trying to create this reality show to change people's lives. And they've auditioned everybody in the UK and throughout Europe and even in the United States. They've done auditioning for 9 months and they can't find anyone who can do it. They're just hoping that you could do a screen test tomorrow. And I was like, why, yes, I can. Let me do that.
Yes.
You know, and I was an actress when I was younger, and I quit acting, this is what's the irony is I quit acting because I realized I no longer wanted to be anyone else but myself, and I didn't know who that was.
I got it.
Acting to be myself, and now here I am auditioning for a show to be myself and change lives. So I go to the screen test, and they have a young girl there. She's about probably 25, 27, and it's about dating. And again, I was an actress, and I just went for it because I'm not ashamed. I'm not cameras are easy for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, 3 weeks later, I was living in London and doing the first reality show of its kind in the world. It was called Life Doctor Changed to Help Me, Rhonda, the second season. And then after the second season, I as I do every year, I moved back to the States after we quit filming, and they were starting to cast for the show, the first reality show in America, changing lives, called Starting Over. Yeah. And that was on NBC Monday through Friday. I was on every single day for 3 years. And since I was the only person in the whole world who had done it, you know, when I was in the production meetings with the executive team before they hired me, is like that last meeting, they're like, well, this is how the show's going to go. And I went, no, actually, it's not, because I actually am the only one here that knows actually what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I said to myself, if they're brave, they'll hire me because I know more than they do. But if they want full control, they won't, because I know more than they do. So They did hire me. And then from there, I started over for 3 seasons. Then I did Celebrity Fit Club, changed celebrities' lives. And then I've pitched tons of shows. Oprah bought a show of mine. And so, yes, done a lot of pitching, know the TV industry well, wrote 4 books, so know the publishing industry well. So, yeah. Well,
you certainly accomplished a lot. And that is awesome. How did you sort of make that epic decision that you wanted to help people, conquer fear?
Well, I did not make that epic decision. Well, I did eventually. I made it eventually. But, I grew up in, let's just say I had a lot of history in my past. And if you want to talk about that, we absolutely can. And well, I think I have to tell you this part. So,
alrighty.
So if you don't mind, I'll just,
absolutely.
Yeah, because
it's a conversation. Let's see where it goes.
It doesn't make sense if I don't. So I'm just going to tell you about the worst day of my life, and that'll lead us to why I made the epic decision to actually help people change lives. So I grew up in a little tiny town, and I believe, by the way, that our worst days of our life actually hold the seed of our destiny.
I believe that too.
Right? You don't see it in the minute, you see it in hindsight, right? So tracing back your life, you can see, like, even me quitting acting, it just set me on a path. And who knew that acting was going to lead me there, right? It's just so fascinating. So the worst day of my life was when I was 14 years old, and I grew up in a little town in Upper Michigan, two restaurants, Douglas House Buffet Hotel and Big Boy. And my parents had recently separated. It was Father's Day, and so my father was coming to take us out to brunch, me and my two sisters. So it's my mom, three of us, my dad, that's 5 people, a lot of money. And my mom is in her bedroom, fluffing up her beehive and putting on her blue eyeshadow and rose-colored lipstick. My 2 sisters are fighting it out in our one bathroom. And my dad walks in, come on, let's go, let's go, let's go. And me and my mom start walking out. My sister's still in the bathroom fighting it out. And as we start walking out, it's starting to sprinkle. So my dad says he has to get his coat from the car. Now, this coat is a tan Naugahyde leisure suit coat, which in the day was really good looking. And so he opens his trunk.
Gotta love some Naugahyde.
A Naugahyde, you bet, baby. Right?
Save the Naugas.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So, no problem. So he opens the trunk, and instead of grabbing a coat, he's actually grabbing a gun. And he starts yelling at my mother, you made me do this, you made me do this, and he fires. And I start screaming, Dad, what are you doing? Dad, what are you doing? Stop. And he cocks the gun again, points it at me, and I believe I'm next. And he blinks, I blink, he blinks. We're basically in a stare down. And my mother, literally with her last breath, sees what's happening and screams out, no, don't. In that moment, my father, realizing my mother is still alive, takes that bullet intended for me and shoots my mother a second time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that second bullet goes through her abdomen, out her back, lands in the car horn. And for the next 20 minutes, all I hear is,
Mm-hmm.
And then my father cocks the gun, puts it to his head and fires.
Oh, my gosh.
So in a matter of 2 minutes, I was the sole witness of watching my father murder my mother and commit suicide in front of me.
Oh, my gosh, Rhonda.
Yeah. So I don't know how you would respond, Xander, but this is how I responded. It must be my fault because I was the only one physically out there that could have changed it, right? And I didn't grab the gun, and I didn't kick his shin, and I didn't jump in front of my mother. So when you watch your mother die and you're frozen in space, you don't get to be happy ever again, just FYI, because that's off the table. And, basically in that moment, I always like to say that it's like I split in two, right? The outside Rhonda, I was fine. I'm fine. That's how I lived, fine. And then the inside Rhonda, again, don't get to be happy. You didn't save your mother. You're a piece of it. You don't ever get to have anything good happen to you, right?
Sure.
And so I went to high school, went to college, went away to college, and thought, oh, goody, nobody knows my story, right? No, I'm a clean slate. And then I found alcohol, and alcohol numbed the pain. And so I became an alcoholic. And then I eventually got 3 DUIs. And then I eventually tried to kill myself 3 times. And it was that third suicide attempt that I realized I'm not very good at killing myself. That's 1. And 2, I'm not dying, so there has to be a reason I'm alive.
Sure.
Now, I wasn't happy about it, by the way, Xander, right?
I can imagine.
Yeah. And when you try to kill yourself 3 times, they do put you in a psychiatric ward for evaluation. So they put me in the psychiatric ward, and they deemed me after a few days not crazy, sent me home. And I remember going home and thinking to myself, all the times I was drinking and DUIing and suiciding, I was also going to therapy, reading books, going to workshops. I was doing everything I could to help myself. And as I sat there in my little tiny studio apartment, I said to myself, I have a lot of knowledge because I've done all those things, and I have a lot of tools, but none of that took away the feeling that there's something significantly wrong with me. There's something wrong with me, bottom line. And I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to myself, I have to start over. I just have to start over because none of that has helped me, right? It hasn't gotten me anywhere. So I thought to myself, what do you do in kindergarten? I have to go to kindergarten. What do kindergartners do? Well, they get calendar and gold stars. So I actually went to the store, got a calendar and gold stars. And every day for the next 30 days, I put a gold star on the calendar. Anytime I did anything anything good.
Sure.
So we're talking about drinking but not getting drunk, or getting angry and not breaking anything, right? And at the end of 30 days, I had a calendar filled with gold stars. And that was what started giving me hope that maybe I could change. And it also set me on a quest to figure out what was that thing that was telling me that there's something wrong with me, that I was broken, that I could never heal. And that eventually, over a course of my own work, is fear. And that is how I started on that journey of embracing fear. But back to your story of asking me the question of how I started helping people. So here I am. As I said before, I was an actress. I quit acting. So by this time, I have a little PR company, and I work with solo entrepreneurs. Okay, and one of my clients is one of the first executive business life coaches, and he would always tell me, "Rhonda, you're going to be a better coach than me." And I would look at him like he's crazy, because I really believed my past was who I am. Right? Who's going to listen to somebody who tried to kill themselves 3 times, was an alcoholic, right? And now sober, of course, and had 3 DUIs. And by the time, when you get 3 DUIs, you got to go to jail for a little while. So I was in jail, right? Yeah. So I am not a role model. Okay. So when he would tell me this, I would literally look at him like he is a crazy person. That is never going to happen. And by the way, Sandra, I don't think I'm alone. I think a lot of people don't follow their calling and make those epic decisions because of their past, and they believe their past is who they are. Right. And I believe that, right. They just keep.
Yeah. And what I'll say, and, I talk about it, is the meanest person in your life is you.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
The amount of mean things and not taking anything away from your, horrific story there of losing your mom and your dad and witnessing all of that.
We're all mean.
We are so mean to ourselves. The things that we say, I'm not good enough. I don't deserve happiness. I don't do. And I talk about in my book, and it's kind of, I was like, oh yeah, that's exactly it, which is, I call it my 97-3 rule, which is that 97% of your day is actually really good. And up to 3% isn't as good, right? Now, yes, some days it's much higher than 3%, but in general, on average, there's a lot more good happening in your day. And yet when we talk to people, we focus on just that 3%.
That's right.
And I honestly, I'm baffled by that, because I was like, there's so many great things. Look.
But that's fear. But that's how fear works.
It is fear. And look, I woke up this morning. Not that I didn't think I'd wake up, but it's a great start. Right. I should celebrate that.
Right. Right. But we are all inundated with fear. And unless we understand how fear works, we will have a difficult time transcending it.
Oh, absolutely.
And so here I am in to answer your question finally, is, I'm at my client's house, who's a coach. Like I said, he keeps telling me I'm going to be a better coach than him. I think he's crazy. And one day we're brainstorming. He's out at the whiteboard, and he's writing things down. We're brainstorming his next class. I'm sitting on the couch. And here's the woo-woo part, the mystical, freaky part, is that out of the corner of the ceiling, a cloud comes out, a book is on it, and it goes like this. It shuts, goes back on the cloud, and goes back in the ceiling. And I am like, what the hey?
Yeah.
Because I got a message when that happened, and I thought that message can't be for me. So I turned around to look to see somebody must have walked in, right? Like, it can't be for me. I just accidentally heard it, right? Nope, nobody walked in. Then I look over at Paul. Well, it must be for him, and he's talking still, working on the board, and I start realizing that message might be for me.
Yeah.
And I am freaking out inside, because the message is, well, first of all, it answered every question I'd ever had about life. So now I had all the answers to everything. And the second thing it told me is, now you must go and share this. You must go and teach this.
Sure.
And I'm like, did you forget I'm an alcoholic, Susan? Right. And so the next day I happened to have an appointment with my minister, because I was actually a spiritual practitioner 4-year program. So I run to my minister. I say, I got this thing. The sky came down, the book, the cloud, the ding. And she goes, oh, you got the call. And I go, yeah, okay, I got the call, but I'm not ready. I have to go finish my bachelor's, because I left college with 3 classes left to be rebellious. So got to go finish my bachelor's, get a master's, get a PhD, write my book then. So it'll be 7 to 10 years. I'll be ready. I'll be ready in 7 to 10 years. And she just kept saying over and over, if you got the call, you're ready. And I literally was like, you are a crazy person. And it took me about 6 months to surrender, to then make the quote unquote epic decision that I was scared to death to make, because I still didn't believe I had a right. I just knew that I was supposed to, based on divine guidance, right? Based on,
absolutely.
Right. And so I kind of leaned on that for the first 6 months. Like, I guess I'm supposed to be here. And then Paul was my client, but he was also a coach. So I would have a session with somebody, and then I'd go to his house and be like, they said this, I said this, and get mentoring.
Sure.
And then after about a year, I was like, I got this. I know what to do. And that really was when I surrendered to saying yes to this new journey I was on, to actually claim the title of life coach. Because, by the way, there's only 5 of us in the world at that point. So nobody knew what it was. And really put out my shingle as, I can change your life. Yeah, that was a big deal. And the good news is I could.
And I could say I totally relate to that, because like, if you told me in college that I was going to write 1 book, never mind 3,
yeah,
I would have told you that you're crazy. You're drinking. Like there's
you got the wrong guy.
Not. Yeah. I'm a talker, not a typer, right? Yeah, and I hate writing and stuff. So when I wrote my first book, I sat on it for 5 years. I kept telling people I was coming out with a book, but I wasn't. I was no more coming out with a book than I was flying to the moon, Rhonda, and I didn't want to be one of those people that 20 years later says, oh yeah, I'm coming out with a book. And people are like, yeah, right.
Yeah.
So even though I had nothing, I had feedback that I wasn't a particularly good writer all through my academic career, all of that. I really hated writing. I got brave and I put the book out there. And, some people call it the imposter syndrome, whatever. I think you can relate to this whole, I'm supposed to write a book. No, I'm not. I don't have a degree. I don't have.
Who do you think you are?
Exactly. And people came up and they, I'd hear that they really liked the book, that it was helpful and all of that. And I would have believed more if they told me it wasn't worth the paper was printed on.
Sure. Yeah.
Than positive feedback. Again, going back to being the meanest person in your life.
By the way, you have to give me evidence how it changed your life, because I don't believe you right now. That's just a compliment. Give me the facts.
Yeah, exactly. Really? You liked my writing. You liked what it was helpful.
Tell me how it did it. Tell me how it made a difference.
Exactly. But people did like it. And then I'm like, oh, look at that. I'm a published author. Yeah. I did this, and it is helping people, which is what I want to do. Yeah. And, just like you, I spent 17 years as a technical instructor. I taught people how to use software for various companies and really enjoyed it. However, when I got laid off for the last time, I was like, why am I teaching someone else's stuff when I know what I want to teach is my stuff?
Yes.
And so as you're telling your story, I'm like, oh yeah, I can relate to that. And it is, look, any big change we make, when we have a dream and we go, all right, I'm going to start doing it. Like my book says, it begins with 1 step forward. And oftentimes that step is not nearly as difficult as we anticipated it being. Because it's not some monumental thing. You want to sit down and write a book, you type the first letter.
Heck, you get a piece of paper out.
Right. You write a word.
You write a word.
You just started.
Right. That's right. You just start going blah, 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 blah. Right.
Exactly.
It just I mean, I teach, I teach a couple writing classes. One is a fearless first draft. So your first book, your first draft. And, everybody doesn't know what they're doing. Right. And so that's the point. I love that. I love that story. I love that epic decision.
What's so funny when I'm working with people, and I'm sure you get the same thing, people are like, oh my gosh, how am I going to do this? I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the steps. Guess what? I don't have all the answers to everything that's going to come up today, but it didn't prevent me from getting out of bed and starting my day.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I mean, it's so exciting too. We have these callings, so because when I went to that minister and the minister's like, when you got your calling, it's like, I think we all hear something. I think, I won't say all of us, but many of us at some time in our life have heard something, some message, been moved by something, been inspired by something, and we are like, oh, we're like, yes, just that moment. And it lasts maybe for a millisecond for some of us. And I always like to say that millisecond of clarity, no matter, I don't even care if it lasted a millisecond of a millisecond. If you got some moment of clarity, some sort of vision, some sort of insight, some sort of like that, then that moment is the most important thing in your life. Like that is the truth of your life. More than anything else, more all that negative self-talk, like you're saying, more than anything, your job right now, keeping that moment, that's just a millisecond of clarity, that little bit of calling, just to keep it in this safe space of like, okay, this is what I am going to be moving towards. This is my future, and keeping it protected instead of naysaying it. Because I can't tell you how many people, which I'm sure you have too, so many people go, I had something like that happen, but I didn't do it. I didn't believe it. I thought I was crazy. Right. I thought I needed I thought I was mentally ill because I heard this voice, right? It's like, no, it's actually your calling, and that's what you're actually supposed to be doing. But so many people, because they don't have support, because they don't understand how fear works, they don't understand, they focus more on their negative self-talk than who they really are, right? Then they take away their right to that moment. They take away their right, that vision, that moment of inspiration. They take it away from themselves, thinking they, again, don't deserve it, or they haven't earned it, or they're crazy. And so, again, I think that moment of clarity, no matter how small, no matter how quick, is actually the most important moment of our life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think another thing that sometimes there are absolutely moments of clarity, but sometimes I believe that life, there's something that keeps kind of coming up over a couple of years, right?
Yep. Nudge, 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 nudge.
Yeah,
nudge,
hey, I'm supposed to do something about that. And the idea for my first book, I was a motivational speaker. I knew I needed a book, but I'm like, what the heck am I going to write a book about? And it was an offhanded comment from a college friend of mine who I met with her. She had recently lost her brother, and I lost my sister 28 years ago. And she just said, again, offhandedly, yeah, I was just at Borders Books. And for those of you who may be younger and don't know, that's a bookstore. It was a place that sold lots of books. And she goes, there were lots of books on loss of a parent, loss of a child, but really nothing on loss of a sibling. And as I walked away from that cup of coffee, I was like, well, I know that. I could write a book about that. And I did. Yeah. And the book you see over my shoulder, Why Don't They Cry? That came because as I was doing work with siblings, lots and lots of parents who had lost a child, had other living children, and they go, Xander, I lost a son, but I have other living children. Like, why don't they cry? Why don't I see them grieve in front of me? Mm-hmm. Again, kept coming up. Yes, well, perhaps sometimes we're a little deaf to the messages.
Oh, we're always deaf to the messages, pretty much.
And it comes back to you. Yeah. And then over and over. And then I was like, oh, I need to write something. And so you're right. We do have those moments of clarity. And we have those moments where there is the things that we know. Mm-hmm. Really, we know. But we just don't want to admit to ourselves because it's fear, because it's scary to say, I'm doing the wrong thing. This relationship isn't right for me. This job isn't right for me. I'm really not happy. And I find that I'm happy when I'm doing this other thing, but oh my gosh, how would I ever do that? I can't make a change. I talk to people all the time that one of the most powerful forces we have in our life is choice. And I will absolutely grant that in all of our lives at some point, our choices are crap and crappier. Okay.
Well, as I always say, in order to live the life, that epic life that you're describing, is are you willing to be wrong about everything to find the right life for you?
Absolutely.
And unless you have the humility, or be willing to have humility and be willing to be vulnerable and be willing to self-reflect. But in that moment of being willing to go, wait a minute, I'm not living the life that I want to live. It takes great humility to even ask yourself that question, to even reflect on that question. It takes so much humility, and it takes so much compassion to allow yourself the grace and then just the space to actually explore what that even means. So one of the things that's missing in so many of our families and inside our own self is the refusal to give ourselves that compassion, the refusal to give that level
Be gentle with yourself, folks.
That's right.
You know, you should be your number one cheerleader, because honestly, if I don't believe in what I'm doing, how can you believe what I'm doing? Right? When we watch TV and you see an ad, the car company isn't like, well, our car is pretty good, and we hope that at 50,000 miles, the transmission doesn't drop out.
Yeah, no, nobody's doing that in sales, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah, and it's you know, I think sometimes, you know, I was raised in the Midwest, as I shared, and you know, thinking of yourself in any way, shape, or form as you're describing, I would have been told I'm big-headed, or I'm too big for my britches, or who do you think you are? And you know, that I have a right to live the life my soul intended is, you know, really like crazy, like how dare you? So, you know, because of all this fear that's been handed down generation after generation, many of us don't give ourselves the grace, the compassion, the permission to actually do it. So, you know, again, I'll go back to what you just said a minute ago, which is be gentle. So the more that we're gentle with ourselves, the more these things can wash away from us, the more they can melt away, the more that they can start shifting. And the more that we're willing to look at our fear with, you know, open eyes, the more it won't run us.
Absolutely. I say to people when I'm talking about grief and stuff, you can choose to define your grief and not have it define you. I lost my sister. That was devastating. But I choose every day how I want to define it and how I want to celebrate her. And that makes all the difference. Sure. And I work with some people who it's like they stop living.
Yes.
But here's the thing, life is a participatory sport, and it will go on whether you're participating today or not.
That's right.
So much better when you're actually out on the field living your own life. Look, we're all going to make mistakes. Okay. The only thing that we're going to fail 100% on are the things that we don't try. And boy, regret that's a bitter pill to have to walk around in your mouth. Oh, I could have done this. I should have done this. I would have done this. Yeah. You're right. But you didn't, and deal with it.
And love yourself anyway.
Yeah.
You know, being willing to just be gentle with yourself and love yourself and, you know, not berate yourself or not judge yourself, and just really go, whatever's happening to me right now, whatever happened in the past to me is where I stand today. And am I willing to just know that all of that added up to where I am? Like everything that's ever happened to me, every decision I've ever made, every relationship I've ever had or not had, every decision I didn't make, refused to make, so to speak, then that's who I am today. And how do I want from this moment to move forward? Because again, for most of my life, I didn't allow myself to move forward because I felt like I had to carry my past on my back. Right. And it wasn't until I forgave my father first. He was the easiest one to forgive, by the way. Then my mother, forgiving her wasn't as easy. And then forgiving myself so that I could let them go, so to speak. I did this on the 20th anniversary of their death. I did a big forgiveness ceremony. And I asked my best friend to witness it, because I do believe we need witnesses. And so she sat in the back, you know, I went to a lake and she sat on a log in the back and, you know, like 10, 15 feet away. So she wasn't involved in it.
Right.
I just sat there and wrote letters and, you know, wrote things about the good things about them being my parents and burned it. And then I wrote all the things that were bad about them being my parents and burned it. And then I said, you know, this is who I've become. And I just wrote letter after letter and letter and just kept burning and burning and burning. And then at the end, I buried all of my burnings and of course said a prayer, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember so distinctly when I stood up from being sitting on the lake there on the ground, and stood up and turned to go to my car and started walking. I will never forget the feeling of the realization that I was walking with my own 2 feet for the first time in my life, and that I'd been carrying my parents. And again, I didn't even know I was carrying my parents until I released them. And then all of a sudden, I remember just walking to my car and feeling like I could breathe for the first time, and that I was walking alone for the first time.
Yeah.
And that they weren't on my back, you know,
yeah,
again.
Well, that weight is gone. Yeah. I mean, I remember exactly where that moment of clarity where I was on the Massachusetts Turnpike, where for months I'd been wrestling with why my sister had been murdered, right? Like why did this happen? And I just had that moment of clarity where I'm like, I'm not ever going to get that answer. And that's okay. I need to let that go because I could spend the rest of my life like a dog chasing its tail, holding on to that. And when I kind of let that part go, it was this, whew, I can actually breathe. I don't have this on me. And I got chills when you were talking about all that you were doing to release, all of that grief and pain about your mom and your dad and yourself. So congratulations on that. That is truly epic, Rhonda.
Thank you. And I love that girl that went through all that, right? Like the 14-year-old girl, I love her. I can't believe she kept going. I love my 16-year-old, my 18-year-old, my 30-year-old, my 20-year-old. I love every single one of them, even though I know I was drinking and I was, getting DUIs and I was trying to commit suicide. I look back at that girl and go, wow, she just kept going, even despite everything, right?
Well, it's that dichotomy of self-medicating. I'm trying to commit suicide, and yet I'm going to therapy and I'm reading books.
That's
and
right.
I'm
That's
like you said
that's
that,
right.
and
That's right. Because I wanted to live.
I almost laughed because I was like, oh my God, that is hilarious. Like
it's
I'm
totally
trying to kill myself, but I'm doing everything to preserve
that's
myself.
Right. That's right. That's right. And I think that's true for so many people who think about, that they want to die, they want to leave the earth, right? Because it's like, yeah, I was doing every possible thing I could think of. And then, it wasn't working in the way that I thought it should. And yeah, dying seemed a whole lot better than keeping on hitting my head against the wall, right? And what the good thing is that I did keep hitting my head against the wall. And I'm glad those did fail, those 3 suicide attempts. And I am glad that I went through the excruciating pain of forgiving my parents and then getting sober and, forgiving my parents and, doing all the work that I did in order to be able to even notice the message from the cloud and the book in the sky, right?
Absolutely.
Like I would have probably not even seen that. And so I'm just grateful for all those me's. And I think that's one of the ways that we can move forward in the future is actually looking back at all of our ages and just saying, thank you. And no matter how screwed up, effed up they were, they got you here. Even if you don't like here, you're still alive. And so if you're alive, if you're breathing, then you're not done.
Absolutely. Rhonda, oh my gosh. Can you believe our time is up?
No, it's too fast, too short.
I know.
And I have a gift I haven't even given yet. Do you mind if I take
Absolutely, please.
Okay. Yeah. So, I've just mentioned fear a few times, and I would love to gift everyone listening to us today a free course. It's called Stretch, Risk, or Die. And it's all about curing procrastination and moving forward in your dreams. So whatever you want to make happen in your life, whether it's health, finances, career, opening your own business, whatever it is, go and get Stretch, Risk, and Die. It's at fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK. And you're going to put your name and your email in it. And it's going to then give you access to the platform, and you're going to go, it's 3 15-minute videos. That's it. And at the end of the third video, I actually describe what I mentioned briefly, which is the Wheel of Fear. So you're going to actually see how I work with fear and what the Wheel of Fear is. And you have one and I have one. We all have one. So then you can discover what that Wheel of Fear looks like and how you can start working with it so that you can understand your fear. So fearlessliving.org/risk, RISK, and go get that free course.
Absolutely. And I'll have that link in the episode description. And so people can just click on it. Rhonda, thank you so much for that very generous gift. I encourage all of the listeners to go out and do it. I'm sure that it's just going to be transformative for all of them.
It will be.
Thank you so much for joining me today. So much. Oh my gosh. Truly epic. Thank you. I want to remind everyone that if you're ready to begin your epic journey, go to epicbegins.com. And as always, remember, epic choices lead to the epic life that you want.
Get your gift copy of the award-winning book, Epic Begins with One Step Forward, at epicbegins.com. That's a wrap on this episode of Epic Begins with One Step Forward with your host, Xander Sprague, best-selling author, internationally acclaimed public speaker, and licensed professional clinical counselor. To make your next conference or event epic, send an email to Zander at zander@epicbegins.com. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Remember, epic choices, epic life.